Hello, everyone. It's good to see you. It's going to be an interesting episode. I've got a little story, surprising, right? That might be of interest to you. And I will share that with you here shortly. But the topic is don't stick your nose. And then we'll finish that thought after you remember to like, share, and subscribe my YouTube channel. It will help us grow the channel and allow us to reach more people. And as always, we're doing battle with that YouTube algorithm. So we're trying to do the best we can, and with a little help from our friends, that would be you, maybe we can reach a few more people. Now, having said that, let's go ahead and talk about what our message is today in terms of lessons learned. So I'd like to share this with you from the start. Don't stick your nose in other people's backyard because you might get it bit. Now, you might think that's kind of a strange topic, but in truth, we were out working in the yard the other day, probably about a couple of weeks ago maybe, and I'm at the side of the house working on some planters that we've tried to spruce up a bit, and I hear this large yelp. It was like a big cry, and I immediately dropped everything I was doing because our older dog was out in the backyard, and as he would have habit of doing, he was placing his nose under the fence, kind of checking out the other people's backyard, our neighbors behind us. Now, to be honest, we don't know the neighbors behind us, but they had recently got a new dog. And that new dog is a German Shepherd. And so that German Shepherd is staking out its new territory, obviously. And so when Karmie, our older dog, stuck his nose under the fence to greet his new neighbor, I'm sorry, it was a costly checking out the neighbors sort of scenario. He got it bit, and I'm not talking about lightly bit. He had puncture wounds. Bless his heart. I mean, we've had a couple of instances where we've had to rush him to the vet. When I ran out and picked him up, I could see the puncture wounds, and he was bleeding, of course, and he was whimpering and everything. So we immediately jumped in the car and took him to an emergency care animal veterinarian, and the doctor got him fixed up. He had puncture wounds, and he had bit his own tongue, and I mean, he had shots. The vet gave him shots, and he had antibiotics to take. And that little episode of being nosy, trying to greet the new neighbor and seeing what was going on, cost us about $360. Of course, we would spend it each and every time, but hopefully he's not going to make a habit out of this, because the other time he stepped on a wasp, of all things, and got stung pretty badly. So the backyard's not been his best friend, but I think there's a message here for all of us. Perhaps that message is, don't stick your nose in other people's business unless you're invited. And if you are invited, be careful, because sometimes even that does not end well. And, you know, the reason why I bring this up is that in the workforce, you're going to have management dealing with other employees because of maybe training or lessons learned, or perhaps even disciplinary action. And guess what? It's none of your business. As a matter of fact, I've actually had an engineer come in, and we were talking about something to do with the job, and he wasn't very happy with something about the job. And I said, well, why don't you do this and maybe talk to the director of ethics or something along those lines. And he said, well, it's not going to do any good because they never do anything. And my immediate response to him was, you know, here's the thing about that. If there is an issue with another person on the job, management and even HR is going to get involved. And whatever corrective action they take really is none of your business. You may never hear back, but the individuals involved will know what the consequences were for stepping outside the bounds of company policy and procedure and just good, decent human behavior. But the thing is that people have private business, whether in their personal life or in their professional life. And you see these busybodies every time something's going on across the street, somebody's got their curtains open, kind of looking to try to figure out what's going on. And it really is none of your business. And when you start involving other people to intrude upon somebody else's privacy, that's even more severe. Now, there's this quote that I give my students in class, obviously another quote, right? But we talk about self-development and staying relevant to the workforce. And the quote is by Bacon. He said, knowledge is power. Knowledge is power. But I've kind of riffed on that. And I said to my students, because we were talking about privacy and maintaining our privacy and being careful in terms of online activities, because there's hackers and people trying to get information about you. But the riff I made was simply this: knowledge is power, but knowledge about you is power over you, right? And that's true. If somebody has information about your address, your social security number, your driver's license, pretty soon they have enough information to become you, your mini you. And online, nobody else knows the difference. And if they become you, obviously the danger is they could file false tax returns. They could take out credit cards in your name. They could do lots of things like that and then damage your financial well-being or your reputation, or on and on and on we could go. So we have to learn, whether it's on the job or in our personal life or in our family or with our neighbors, that their business is their business and our business is our business. And then when we come together to socialize, then we can get to know each other on a casual basis and enjoy developing that relationship. But we should not go out of our way, nor should the other person go out of their way to get into our business where they're not invited. To do so would be destructive of any relationship you're trying to build. And in that regard, you would end up not creating a network of friends and mentors and experts in their field or in any other area that would be helpful to you. I cannot tell you the number of times that I have needed some type of help in terms of, I didn't know enough about this particular aspect of maybe something in woodworking or something in metalworking or whatever the case would be. And I would call somebody that was very knowledgeable that I knew, and they were more than willing to help. But on the flip side, if you constantly are nosing about trying to get into their business where you have not been invited, then when they see your name on the phone call that comes up, they're quickly going to send you off to voicemail. And you may or may not be able to receive anything back from them, a phone call, a text, or what have you, because they would think, quite possibly, and based on past history, that you're nosing around trying to get into their business where you have no business being. So kind of like Karmie. Karmie stuck his nose in somebody else's backyard and it got bit. If you stick your nose in other people's business where you have not been invited, you could suffer some unintended consequences that may not be pleasant. And I'm just saying this from a standpoint that Karmie's little episode happened within the last 2 weeks, and it got me to thinking about how we deal with one another and how we deal with organizations online or at work or what have you. And our privacy is very, very important to us, because we don't want people standing themselves up as if they were us and doing us financial or personal damage. And it's very difficult to overcome that. You go ask somebody that's had their identity stolen. If their identity is stolen, it will take them months, if not years, to correct whatever damage the individual that stood themselves up as if they were you and open up all these charge cards or whatever, file false tax returns. Because all those other businesses know is that was you, because there's your driver's license, perhaps there's your address. You know, they have critical information about you that nobody else should know. In other words, your personal information is the keys to your kingdom or your queendom. And in this day and age, with how tightly coupled we are and entangled we are with the internet, that could be dangerous if people know that type of information, and they could propagate it. Now, you know, I've had students tell me and friends say, well, whatever comes to my mouth comes to my mind comes out of my mouth. And my only comment back would be, if you're sharing information that's not necessarily asked for about yourself, you're providing knowledge and information about yourself that others could do you damage with. And I'm not saying the person you're directly talking to, but if you're chatting with somebody online or chatting with them in a restaurant or what have you, there are other people that could overhear. And so I'm just saying that from the standpoint of conducting yourself as a professional and conducting yourself in your personal life, share what needs to be shared, be aware of your surroundings, and make sure you keep your nose out of other people's business and only go where you are invited. And I think you're going to be okay. I think you're going to be okay. The rest of the story is Karmie's okay. He was in pain for about a week, but through the shots that he received and the antibiotics he was taking, there was no long-term harm other than he's getting a fewer dog biscuits because we spent $360 on his medical bill. But I think he can deal with that. He can lose a little weight, all right? So with that, please tell me what you think. Leave a comment down below. No thumbs down, thumbs up, thumbs up. Leave a comment below and help me grow this channel. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. And with that, all the best.